Hello and welcome to our uh, podcast Bor-Kothoki. And today we have with us Mitra Phukan. So Mitra Ba, welcome to the podcast. How are
Thank
you?
you so much. Thank you so much, Pramotesh. It's lovely being here. I do follow your podcasts, so it's good to be here. Thank you. I'm fine.
It's nice to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we begin, let me tell you the format of the podcast. Uh, I started this podcast way back in 2000. There are many people interested in poetry because they don't get the context of why someone wrote the poetry.
Well,
Yeah. So because of this gap, uh, people are not able to understand the poems. So I started reading my poems with a slight uh, backstory to it. And after doing that, I started bringing a new guest with whom I spoke about their creative process, and I try to understand what provoked them to write. And gradually, it began from poetry to other creative people as well. So now we have guests from different creative writings as well, both from prose and non-prose, and even non-fiction writers are coming into it. So I hope to bridge this gap by telling the readers what was the backstory uh, behind the writing that will help them understand uh, the writer's perspective of those two writings that they have written.
yes, that is extremely important to know. And I also am very interested about the backstories, certain books I read. For instance, I have just finished the Han Kang's, that Nobel Prize winners book. And I have been reading about the backstory, about, how that came about, what is the backstory culturally. So this is something that widens the mind, and I think you're doing a very good thing by having different genres represented here.
Yes, and it is the stories that interest people than anything else.
Right, right.
And I was just going reading a few books written by Japanese authors, and I came to know about so much about their culture. So
Right.
it is the stories that help us understand how people think around the world as well.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And also, what shapes their thinking? What the society that shapes their thinking? The society that shapes my thinking, my society. So, if we learn about these things from the mouth of the author, then I think it gives an extra dimension to the whole reading process as well, and the writing process as well. It's true.
Okay, before I ask you further question, I would like to say that you have a nice tattoo in your head. I just
Thank you. Thank you. Shall I put it up? Thank you for noticing. Yeah.
okay,
It's
what does that mean?
it's just aesthetic. Uh,
Okay,
oh, it's so nice. I have never spoken about my tattoo on an interview or off the record, everybody. But I would like to know that I have two sons, and before they got their tattoos, their mother got one. So they were thinking that tattoo. We are wondering whether we should get tattoos now that the mother has one. There's no point. So yeah, but this is very old. It's about 18, 19 years old.
wow.
Yeah. Thank you for noticing.
Yeah. Coming to aesthetics, I have seen that when you write, you maintain a certain aesthetic in your writing. Is it something conscious, or do you think that you have developed it over the years of writing because of the people you are surrounded with? Also?
So, yes, I think because my writing is very realistic, but it's realism, and so obviously my my triggers come from what I see around me, what is happening around me. Sometimes a conversation, sometimes even a fragment of a conversation which I happen to overhear while going somewhere, and usually I'm eavesdropping shamelessly when I'm sitting on a flight, and when I'm sitting at the airport or anywhere. I am eavesdropping shamelessly, and I find such interesting bits of conversation everywhere, which then I immediately write down in a notebook, and then I later on, sometimes, not always, it finds a way into my writings. But about the aesthetics, about the style, I find I don't know, because it's a realistic. All my themes are based on real what I see around me, what is happening around me, and of course the imaginative component is very much there. Otherwise, you cannot have fiction. I create characters and dialogue and plot and all that. But the what I find about the aesthetic or the style is that because I was at one time a professional singer, musician. I was, a radio singer and all that, and I was trained. So I find that I need in my style, I I need a particular rhythm, which perhaps comes from my training in music or whatever. I won't say, if I was writing poetry, which I don't. I know it would be more melodic, but because it is prose, I am very, even when I'm translating, I need to have that rhythm, that which subconsciously, how the rhythm goes on while you are singing. Okay, it is, you may be doing other things, but the rhythm is always there. So I think similarly in my mind, in my subconscious, as I'm framing the sentences, the rhythm keeps going. Da din din na, da din din na, like that. It keeps on. I That's how I think of it. And if there's a tal that is not going in sync with it, then I feel very disturbed. So that's a very simplistic way of saying it, but it's important to me. That's why I've mentioned it. Yeah.
Uh, there are two things that stuck to my mind when you were speaking.
Okay.
For the very long time, I remember it's that you have written columns for Assam Tribune, and
The
you have
sentence
written,
before
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and you have written for from the era where it was like you were writing for the broadsheet, and your columns were pretty large, like it covered half a page
Oh,
for.
yeah. And
And,
gradually, the editor began to tell me, please, we need, they are cutting down the size of everything,
yeah,
not just mine. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. I'm coming to the point. Like, even
Uh,
though it was so large, like as a child also, I could read from start to the end without getting disinterested.
Thank you
And
so much. I'm so
it was
glad.
so efficient writing, and it was like how I should put it. It was efficient writing, and it was, as you mentioned, that it was in a rhythm. So
Yes. Yes, I think that efficient. Thank you. Nobody has told me this before, but I think because it was a column, or it is a column, that is why it has to be efficient. Because that is part of, as you will know, it is part of a journalistic. Everything else is news, 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 news. So you can't suddenly have something that is not, you know, I mean, it was not, it was my thoughts or what I thought or what I think and all that. But I think basically, you know, like in music, basically, yeah, you may have a lot of melody, you may have this, but it is the rhythm that is taking you from point A to point B, along with the melodies, of course. So if you have gone from the first sentence to the last, thank you for not skipping whatever I wrote. Uh, a lot of it is due to, of course, theme and other things, all of that. But the rhythm is also there. You know, the rhythm is taking you, and different tempos. You know, sometimes the rhythm is the same, but the tempo goes faster or the tempo goes slower, like in music. That's how I like to look at it.
Yeah, and there's one more point in columns that you have to fit the space. You cannot leave a part of it in a,
Yeah.
so here the number of words is also consistent throughout all your
Call.
columns. So,
The
uh,
Assam, yeah, the Assam Tribune one, which is now many years old, I think 12 or something. So it began with 1200 words. And then
mm,
they said, for whatever, I think readers' attention spans are getting less. Mine is certainly getting less. So now it is 900 words, but I stretch it to little less than 1000. And it's
okay,
actually, yeah, it's actually much more difficult to condense your thought than it is to have a large canvas. That's what I find.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think for it's a very a huge feat to continue a column like this for so long, because
Thank you.
uh,
Yeah.
we don't realize it if we see the writings every day. We take it for granted, but it is a very difficult thing to write so regularly. So
Actually, no, I'm very delighted because before this, I was writing City Chirpings, if you remember, in the Sentinel, which is actually where and the editor, I am always grateful to him, Dhiren Besborwa, for
mm,
giving me that space. And I could do whatever I wanted. Sometimes he would call me and say, "You are wrong." And I would say, "Then please correct it." He says, "No, it's your column. You correct it. Why should I?" And I'm grateful for those things. You know, somebody, you need a mentor. You need somebody who will encourage you outside your family. Family will encourage anyway. So I'm very grateful to him, and that I did. But then he left Sentinel, and I had told him, if you stop being the editor, I will also stop writing the column. And he, of course, tried to persuade me. I said, nothing doing. Then this offer came from Assam Tribune, so I was happy. There was a continuity.
okay.
Yeah.
So the do you have any writing routine so that even if it is not being published, so you keep on writing uh, so that it helps you keep the flow of your thoughts coming out in paper easily.
Yes, absolutely. This routine is very important because, you know, we tend to think of writing, especially poetry, as, you know, a flash of inspiration comes, something like Kubla Khan, Coleridge's Kubla Khan comes, you know, he has this vision and all that. Unfortunately, it's not true for most of us. And you know, what is required is plod. You know, you have an idea. I mean, this is how it works for me. I have an idea, I see things around me, and this idea is germinating in my mind, and it takes a long time. The germination process takes a long time. And then, of course, notes. I believe in notes. And for different books, because I write fiction, non-fiction also, but and translations also, but then the for my fiction, it's notes. So uh, my first novel, not my first book, was The Collector's Wife, which was published by Penguin and Zuban. Let me see if I have it here. Um, yes, here it is. The Collector's Wife, which came out in fact, 20 years ago. 20 years ago in March 2005, which is a long way away. But the thing is that we were at that time, you will remember, we were coming out of this horrible phase of violence. We were just coming out. And I believe that while you are within an ecosystem, at least for me, I cannot write about it. I have to come out of that a little bit, whether physically or whether in the context of time. In this case, it was time. And then, the thoughts come in, and I took, I would save snippets of newspaper reports. I would listen to all the conversation that was happening to me, happening around me. And as you know, at that time, so many kidnappings, so many killings, so many extortions were happening. And all of this happened to people I knew, to people within my own family. So all of that I made into notes. And the thing was that it was difficult. And because it was so close to us, all my fiction is close to me. So it was very difficult to put it all into a book form, in the sense of having a clarity of plot, creating characters. None of the characters are obviously real, but they are based on certain things, and they are based on certain needs. A character needs something placed in that way. A character is created because of what he or she brings to the story. So yes, that was there. And then so many people asked me about the setting. That is this, for instance, Tezpur? Is it Duliajan? Is it so and so? No, real places in Assam. I say no. The name of the place is Parbatpuri, and it is completely a figment of my imagination. So, of course, I was influenced by the various places around Assam. But the thing is, it is the creative process amalgamates, I think, all these things, and then something marination happens. And then, of course, through a long and painful process of years, 3 years in this case, a long and painful process, the for me, the most difficult thing is to create a coherent plot. How in a fiction, how to put all this in as fiction, as something that moves the story from point A through A B C D E F G right down to point Z. So how to do this, and then how to put in all these thoughts into my characters, symbolized by the characters, how to put in all these thoughts and themes into the languages, into the language spoken by the characters, the thought processes of the characters, the incidents, and so on. So that is one way in which this thing goes on. So of course, all my other books, and I try not to repeat myself. So this was completely about insurgency. I have many short stories about insurgency. But the next one was about music, a monsoon of music, complete break. And then the next one was What Will People Say, which came out. Of course, in between, there were other books also. So I'm talking of fiction and short stories as well.
Yeah, I remember that after getting my first job, the first thing came to my mind that I should buy books. And the first book that I bought was The Collector's Wife. Of course, I did not buy it in 2005,
You
but
must have bought it much later.
uh,
Yes.
it was around 2009, and
Yes.
I, I went to a bookstore, and as soon as I noticed it, I
You
did
bought.
not look for any other book. So
How nice. Thank
uh,
you. Yeah.
the
So, yeah.
cover of the book was very intriguing, and when I was reading it, I could sense that character has been built very carefully, and I could almost imagine the protagonist in my mind. So
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for buying the book. I feel really good about that. Yes, it has been touchwood by the grace of God. It has touchwood is doing well. It is part of the syllabus of many colleges and universities, and the subject of PhD theses and so on. I'm really grateful, but I did not write for all of this. Writing is a kind of catharsis as well, especially this book, not so much the others, but it was a kind of a catharsis. And I was, especially towards the end, that ending, I mean, I found, because that is the end of so many of the stories of that time, that kind of, anguish. That is how so many of these stories ended at that time. It is really, but another thing that strikes me, I don't know if I'll write about it, I don't know how I will write about it, is the resilience of our people. We have gone through all of that, and yet we are moving about our daily jobs now. We are doing our things now. So that resilience is also moving to me.
Yeah. You have also written a lot about music, also not just in your books, but also uh, like even in collector's wife also, there was something about music as well. There are influences. So
Yes.
does it come natural to you, or is it like because of the way you think it happens?
It certainly comes naturally to me. In this, my latest novel, for instance, let me see if yes, What Will People Say, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, this is my latest one, which came out into 2023 by Speaking Tiger. So, What Will People Say is about social restrictions faced by women in my kind of society, which is not there in different societies, but it's very much present in my society. So, what will people say in Assamese? It's Manuheki Kobo, and that is a boundary. Manuheki Kobo. So you stay within that boundary. That is a huge wall that is built around, especially women. Manuheki Kobo. And in Hindi, of course, log kya kahenge. So then I realized with this phrase, log kya kahenge, that there are so many songs, so many Hindi songs that kuch to log kahenge, logon ka kaam hai kehna. And there are so many, and I couldn't put them all in, and I put many, and then my editor said, no, let's cut down a few and all. So so that came very naturally. That music thing came very naturally. And in fact, many people have commented that there's a lot about music in all your books. That is true. I have this, and even in my children's books, for instance, there's a lot about music. I'll show you my
Mamuni,
sorry.
it was Mamuni.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mamoni's Adventure. This
Yeah.
is my very first book, and it's very dear to me. I mean, it's a tiny little book, but it won some awards and all. And the thing is that children are still reading it. I wrote it when my children were really small, and I was, inspired by them. But now they're all grown up and quite, independent and all. But this is the book I very close to me for different reasons. One is, of course, it's a first book, and then in this book, it's about, it was at that time, this phrase did not exist, man elephant conflict, but it is about a tea garden, and how the elephants come and try to eat the sugar cane. So this little girl Mamoni, tries to uh, chase away the elephants with fire, which is the normal process by which elephants are chased away. It's a kind thing, but then she couldn't find the matches. So she begins to sing a Bihu song in which she puts in her own words. I forget the words, but I remember the rhythm. and she calls the elephant grandfather, Koka. The Koka Gones, and it's the elephants are called Gones. Koka Gones, go away. Yeah. So that thing came into my first. The music thing comes in, and of course I write reviews of music also in various papers, which I like. I enjoy doing, and yeah, it does come in. So even if it is a completely different theme, but some, because music is everywhere also, just as
Yeah.
I feel that for books, for writing, for reading, to get a reader, the reader has to be literate, right? But if I am singing in front of a hall full of people, literacy is not required. Literacy is privilege. In our country, literacy is still, unfortunately, privilege. But if I am singing, that privilege, it's a democratic space.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but it comes naturally. I don't think of all this. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. In fact, the point of starting this podcast also was that poetry should not be a privilege and or luxury. It is a necessity for us. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and, uh, I agree with what you said, that the music is not something that we can live without. And that is how, especially the Indian society, we have grown up with music. So many
All
like,
around. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
everywhere it is music, like uh,
yes.
uh,
So, no, I would like to add a word or two to what you said, like poetry, what you said about poetry. I would expand that to include lyrics. Lyrics is also
yeah.
a specific
Yeah,
kind.
lyrics is it's
Yeah,
a poetry only, but with it is added with music. Yeah,
melody, yes.
yeah.
So, poetry as such may not reach into so many people's, the way they live and so on. But if it is, for instance, if it is a reading in a podcast, or
Mhm.
if it, in a different medium, or through the edition of melody. For instance,
Mhm.
Bhupen Hazarika's, some of his lyrics are, I mean, you cannot forget them, but
Yeah,
also you cannot separate them from the melody. And I think it is because of the melody that it has reached the melodic,
yeah.
part of it, that it has reached so many people. Maybe. I don't know. It's just a thought. I may be
Yeah.
proved wrong.
And now that you have spoken about uh, Bhupen Hazarika, I'd say that his music also had a purpose. Yeah, if you have seen that he had written songs about almost every topic,
Yes.
and
Yes.
he made it sure that he used the words that will stay forever, and it's like an encyclopedia for us also. There are many words we know about it because of his songs.
Absolutely. And he wrote, as you said, about so many themes,
Uh,
so many different ways in which we engage with the world. He said it for us. If you
uh,
want to, and I find it very, very sweet in a way that, if uh, somebody, an Assamese boy, is trying to impress his girlfriend, even today he will sing a love song of Bhupen Hazarika's. I find it really good. That is real accomplishment to have done that. Yeah, and
yes.
I would like to show you the Bhupen Hazarika book brought out
Okay.
by Sahitya Academy, which is actually, they just wanted not more than 100 pages. So I have this vast amount of material on him, gathered with great love, and there was no, I mean, 100 pages is okay. It's not that little, but one can
Uh,
go on and on about it. So, yes,
yeah, but that restriction also helps you to bring the best of his works, and uh,
yes.
Sahitya Academy generally puts restriction on even in the translated works also. I have seen that their books are pretty small, and uh, I find it easy to read those books.
That is true, because you're giving the main points about
Yeah,
the main points about the person. And but no, I was trying to sneak in some more songs, you know.
yeah,
I thought that okay, they say 100, but like all publishers, 120 will be all right. But no, they said, very sadly, they said you will have to remove 20 pages. So I had to remove many songs that are really dear to me. But I guess
yes, I
okay.
understand that.
Yeah, yeah. So
You have also done quite a few of translation works. So
yes.
it is not well known, but I would like to know about it.
So translation, I'm always asked at these lit fests and so on, that why do you translate? Why? First of all, it's my wish, that's why. But no, that there's a reason for it. And there's see, when I first began to write, you know, middles and I think, you know, short stories and so on, I was really grateful that two stalwarts of Assamese literature, Indira Goswami and Nirmal Prabha Bordole, Baidos, both the Baidos,
Mhm.
they came to me with a story. Mamani Baido came with a story and she says, will you translate this for me? And Nirmal Prabha Bordole, who had very spiritual, I said, I don't do poetry. Baido mok poetry ni dibo. So she gave me a piece of prose which was even tougher than poetry, because she used to write about a lot about philosophy and, you know, the Devi and so on. I remember writing about Devi.
Yeah.
She wrote, and I was very, very hesitant. I said, because this was many years ago, I was much younger. I said, I
Mhm.
don't know if I'll be able to do justice, and they had the confidence in me. And they said, Pariba tumi, kyo nwariba? So I said, okay. And then those were my first translation attempts. Then Mamuni Baido, after some time, she came and she said, there is a very prestigious award for translation called Katha Award. Why don't you? Yeah, so they send you stories and you translate them, and you win an award if it's up to the standard. So I said, okay, if you say so. I hadn't even heard of it. And she says, no, it's Delhi based, and I have spoken to them about you, and if you do it, let's see what happens. It's not a given that you'll win, but I did win. And so that is such a enabler. It
Mhm.
is it encourages things. But and so since then I have been very fortunate that many established authors, and not just established authors whom I admire, they have brought their works to me, and I have tried, and we have found excellent publishers. So this latest one is Orupa Kolita's short stories, which just came out last month actually, and I love the title. It's called The Owl, the River, and the Valley, brought out by Penguin, and
Okay.
it's 12 short stories. And oof, it was very difficult because her world is very different from mine.
Okay.
So over the years, yes, I have done quite a few books. I loved doing Hare Krishna Dekka's stories. I really loved doing Biren Bhattacharya's Koboraru Phul, the novel
Mhm.
about Bangladesh, the liberation of Bangladesh, which his son and his wife, that means Baidu, they came to me and they said, would you do this? And of course, I jumped at it. I said, I will try. And I did. And, the thing about Biren Bhattacharya is that the on the surface, the language is very simple. It moves like a river,
Yeah.
like a calm river. But the amount, the depth of it, the metaphors, the allegory, the whole story is an allegory.
Mhm.
And this girl growing up in Bangladesh and what she faces is an allegory of Bangladesh itself. So, the trials and tribulations that come to as you grow to maturity. So, to get all that without interrupting the flow of the story and his humanity, So that really, it was difficult, not because of the language, but because of the layers. And so I find something new in every author I translate. And whenever I begin to translate, I forget about my own style. I try to enter the stylistic world of the author. And of course, I must tell you about this Hare Krishna Deka's stories, which is called Guilt. So I those stories took me 25 years to do. He brought his first story to me when we were all much younger. So that was the story Guilt. And then over the years, he would give me a story, or there are 12 stories in that. He would give me a year, every 1 or 2 years, he would give me a story and he would place them somewhere. I'm not even sure where he placed them, but some good places. Then he came to me and he says, "We already have so many stories. Why don't we do a collection?" So I said, "Okay, let me try." And then this was brought out by Speaking Tiger. And, it shows the progression of the writer over 25 years. It was not a deliberate thing, but it so happened. And I feel it also shows my progression as a translator, because his end stories are very different from his earlier stories. So that's very interesting, I think. Yeah.
It must also be very challenging because you also have to study about various things, what had uh, inspired the author to write something like that. And not just as you mentioned, that it's not just word to word translation, but understanding the deeper layers. So you need to go through the book again and again before translating. So
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I try to do, therefore, authors who are still living authors. So there's always a back and forth. What do you mean by this? And certain phrases like Orupa's stories, some very, very sayings which I was not familiar with, which are, not generally heard in urban Assam, but in rural Assam and among a particular category of people. So that kind of thing. And for Hare Krishna Deka's later stories also, very philosophical. So I had to ask for Biren Bhattacharjee. He's of course, he was no more when I did it, but Baido, she has access, of course, to his diaries. So there certain things I wanted to know, and I asked her, and she would always say, "Give me a couple of days," and she would always come back with the answer. Itu enekoi asile, itu tekhete enekei bhabisle, eneke likha ase diary, and I was so grateful for that. So that is the thing, and I feel there should be, ideally there should be a constant conversation between either the author or somebody close to him or her and the translator.
so yes, it is a very difficult task, I would say. Like
It is. And I'm thinking of taking a break from translation for a while and concentrate on my own. It's so exhausting, translation. But it is something, because I write in English. So I feel in many different ways, because it's so satisfying to translate these authors and place them through English to a larger audience, to a larger readership. That is one thing. Secondly, I feel it is my duty in a way, or my homage to my mother tongue. Yeah.
I just want to ask you, like, since you mentioned Olpa Kalita's book had a lot of colloquialism,
Right.
so uh, how do you deal with that part in translation? Because some people like to keep that part as such and give a rough translation of the in within the brackets. But I want to know, how do you handle this?
Yes, so it depends from each phrase to phrase. It is not a given that I do it all in that way. sometimes, there's a kind of a parity, because this is cultural transference. It's not just linguistic transference, it is cultural. So, yes, for instance, there's something where the metaphor is water, okay, and there's a similar metaphor, but it is snow, for instance, in English. I feel
Yeah.
that, yeah, that will not really work, because how is snow going to come into the middle of the Brahmaputra? Yeah. So that I avoid that, even though there may be a parity, but I don't do that. For instance, this is a very, rough example. So what I sometimes do, and I am completely allergic to footnotes and endnotes, because as a reader I find, it disturbs the flow as a reader.
Yeah.
So I try,
Yes.
yeah, so I try not to do it, one, and then you go down and they say it says one and all. I can't. I mean, as a reader it pains me. So I avoid that. But what I do is, that same thing about the water, I invent a little phrase of my own, where the water is included, and also, that balance. Usually in our idioms and so on, there's a balance between
Yeah.
the two parts of the metaphor, or the simile or something. So I try to do that, but not a literal thing. Literal will not.
Yeah.
Yeah, literal.
It's like poetry only, like you are not supposed to use the already existing metaphors and similes, but you are expected to invent new metaphors and similes, and so
Yes.
I,
So exactly, you've got it exactly. So that is where the creativity of the they say that sometimes people do say translation is, plod. It is plod. Everything is plod in life. But, this is where the creativity comes in. As a translator, how do I not interrupt the flow of the story, and yet put in those images? Those images are important. Those images are completely relevant to the story and relevant to the ornamentation of the story. So I try to do that, and it's fun doing it. I enjoy doing it.
uh, do you read poems?
Do I read poetry?
Yeah.
um I read fiction much more. Let's put it that way. But of course, I read poetry, and some of the greats, obviously. And poetry, what really strikes me is this is storytelling. All of this is
Uh,
storytelling. Fiction is storytelling, even non-fiction is storytelling. Journalism is certainly storytelling, but of course with facts. You cannot
yeah.
fiddle with facts. And in a way, poetry is also storytelling, but it is the storytelling of emotions. It is the storytelling, I feel, of uh, not a particular plot character, none of that, but it is the description, or it also touches the reader in ways that perhaps fiction is unable to. And it
Yeah.
works both ways. Fiction touches the reader in a way that poetry cannot, and similarly poetry touches the way, I think, that condensation, every word. That is why I don't do translation of poetry, because I will be stuck at line 1 for 1 year, because each word, yes, because each word has a good poem has layers. It has so many nuances. There is an elusiveness. There's alluding to so many things. How to put in all of this into a translation in another language, in another culture? It is done very well by A.K. Ramanujan, for instance, where the his English translations of Kannada poems is, I have not read the original, but people say that they are fabulous. I mean, you get into the essence. So the essence of the human experience is something that good writing always does, but poetry, it does it in a very condensed way, I think, and that is why it touches us, and that is why it absolutely, in times of what shall I say, emotional upheaval, it is not a novel you will turn to. It is either music which has lyrics or poetry.
The reason I asked this question is because I see that in your writings, like although you are not using poetry as such, but as I mentioned that you have a certain rhythm and you have also written about music a lot in your writing. So that is why I was just curious whether you uh,
Yes, of course. Yes. Uh, I do. Of course, I read poetry, and of course, I read poetry from in different languages, Bangla as well as Assamese and Urdu. Of course, we are always listening to ghazals. That
uh,
is such beautiful poetry. So, in those ways, definitely poetry is all around. I also read poetry because nowadays on your mobile poems keep coming. There are people who keep sending you poems, yeah, of different writers in translation from different cultures, different ways in which they are done. So I feel that we are living in very good times because of technology, where we can access, we don't have to go to a library, which is, by the way, non-existent in Guwahati, and that is one of my pet peeves, that previously we used to go to libraries and borrow books and read them. Now it's not possible to buy every book you want to read. So the
yes,
thing, yeah, good thing you can buy them online and
yes.
just read them online. Yeah.
No,
So
I perfectly agree with you that libraries are very much needed because I started reading seriously libraries only, and like there are many books that I cannot afford,
of course,
and, and I, as a student, it was even more difficult. And those were books that were like around 2,000 rupees at that time. Libraries definitely help us develop a reading style. So
yes. So yes, about libraries, because I'm always grumbling and complaining about this. So let me grumble and complain about this to you also. See, I was in Shillong, where there was this beautiful library, the State Central Library, and
yes,
every Sunday, and there was a reading culture there.
yes,
So my parents and we, my brother and I, we would go every Sunday. It was a thing, Many people did that. We went there. We changed our library books. All of us had. I mean, my parents had, and so we all did. My mother would read. My father would read all different genres, different languages. My brother, and then I mean, how life, and then we would go for a ride on a boat in the Wards Lake. And then we would eat jalebis in Delhi Mistan Bhandar and
that
come
is
back and then listen to Kolpotoru from Guwahati at that time, Guwahati All India Radio, which was a request program of music, then have a hearty lunch and go to sleep. But the library was central to all of this. Then, when
yes,
I came here to Guwahati, there was, we were members of Narangi Club in at the outskirts of Guwahati, and they still have a beautiful library where the latest books were brought in English. I read from there. But now I find that why is our library, our state library here or district library, why does it have nothing? Why do I have to buy the books? So, and I have, leave aside the cost. I mean, cost is prohibitive, but
mhm,
also there's no space left. I have mountains
mhm.
of stacks of books all around my room, my bedroom.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what
that,
happens to everybody. And when there's an earthquake, it wobbles like this. So I exactly. So it's it's horrible that there's no proper library here. So I've got it
Yes,
off my
I
chest.
I
Yeah,
perfectly agree to it. Like I have two bookshelves full, and then there's one like huge stack of books
right.
in my bedroom, uh, and I don't have space to keep them. and
Exactly. Yes.
and
But
I
yeah,
am more of a book holder than a book reader, so I
yes. And
buy more books than I read.
no, we all have that because we have lots of books and there's no time to read it all. We are reading so much more nowadays, I
Yeah.
feel. Because in my mother's generation, yes, they were avid readers, but books and magazines, hard copy, was all they read. But now there's so much reading material coming in from various sources that just can't keep up with physical books in a
Mhm.
way.
I recently met a young guy who is studying library science.
Okay. Yeah.
I just asked him like, "Are there any libraries?" He said like, "Colleges do have libraries." And then, so he's just hoping that he will get a job in a college or a university.
Oh, that's
He
yes.
he was also like not very happy about it because like library culture is dying. Like
Yes, completely. And I think
government has sanctioned many organization to build libraries, but uh, they never complete. So
nothing happens. Yes.
yeah, it starts by they build a structure, but it never gets like converted into a library for some reason.
That's really sad, and especially for children, because I think children should have access to books. And maybe, I don't know, I have nothing against Kindle or anything because I also read a lot on Kindle. But I think for the pleasure of holding a book, I think children should be exposed to that. Otherwise, they will equate books only with textbooks.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas the joy of bringing home that and even the little towns in those days, because my grandmother's home was is in a place called Dhubri, which is a small
Mhm.
town at the edge of western edge of Assam, and they had a lovely library. And I remember reading all kinds of folk tales from Russia, folk tales from so and so. I read them there, and also lovely stories, children at that time, children's stories, which were, and also PG Woodhouse and so on. It was a very good library, and I believe the Bangla and the Assamese sections were also equally good. So I don't know what has happened to all that. It's very sad.
Yes, I hope that those libraries culture comes back like many other trends are coming back. So
Right. It will be the fashion. I hope so.
yeah, like even I don't enjoy like Kindle very much because reading for that long is not. I cannot read for that long in Kindle or even audiobooks. Like I cannot listen to a book for 19 or 20 hours or something like
Right,
that.
right. Audiobooks brings in a different element because
Yeah,
reading is something you're doing with the alphabets, and
yeah,
audio is something you're doing with your ears. And so, a different, I don't know how to put it. You're listening.
yeah.
Whereas this, you are putting in your own tones, you are putting in, if a character
Yes,
speaks,
the
yeah.
imagery is gone actually.
Yes, yes. So it becomes an what is or I don't know how to put it, but for instance, I feel one of my books, this Monsoon of Music, it's in audiobook format, and I listened to one or two pages, and I said, I can't. I wish they had asked me to do it. I would have done it. So it is not what the author thinks. It is not
Yeah,
because it becomes concretized in a way.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I think that in audiobooks, they should hire more like someone who is more capable of doing vocabularies, like someone from the theater or kind of things.
So yes, yes,
So they should build imagery in the minds of the listener.
right.
So
Yes. Yeah. But anyway, it's better than nothing.
right now, like many authors narrate themselves, or they are professional narrators as well. So uh, I just hope that AI does not replace them, and more human people narrators come and they bring in new styles of narrating the books. And
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so
So
with this, we will conclude this podcast, and it's already 1 hour. I can see.
okay, time has gone fast. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was nice speaking with you, and I did not realize the time until I just noticed that the time is already past.
Yeah, no, I also didn't realize. So it was a very nice. I don't think of it as a podcast. I think
Uh,
of it as a conversation, as a
yeah,
delightful conversation. So thank you so much for having me. And I hope live we can just sit and chat over coffee one
yeah,
day.
yeah. I will definitely try to meet whenever
Please,
I am in Guwahati. So I will
yeah,
try to,
yes, please come over. It'll be really nice.
and I hope that
Yeah,
you uh, visit our podcast again, yeah, very soon.
I would love to. I would love to. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
and we will talk about the other things as well.
As well. Yes. Of course. We'll talk about food and cooking and everything. Okay. Thank
Okay,
you so much, Pramotesh. Thank you.
thank you, thank you.
Thank